everyone, and welcome to another music lesson. My name is Miss Katelyn, and today we're going to talk about a new instrument family together. So far in our videos, we have talked about two instrument families. Can we remember what they're called? The first one included instruments like the violin and the cello. All of those instruments that we talked about were string instruments. Then a couple weeks ago, we talked about instruments that we blow into to make sound, including the flute and the clarinet. Can you remember what those instruments were called? They were the woodwind family. Then last week we got to talk about the flute a little extra since I play the flute all by myself. But today we're back to learning about a new instrument family. This group is called the brass family. Now the brass family, you also have to blow into them to make a sound. But unlike the woodwind family, where you have to blow across like the flute or into the instrument like the clarinet, the oboe, the bassoon, and the saxophone, the brass family you have to buzz into. So let me show you the instruments we're going to talk about today, and I'll explain that. So the brass family includes instruments like the trumpet, the French horn, the trombone, the euphonium, and the tuba. So if you look at our trumpet, at the very end you can see our mouthpiece, which on this picture looks silver, and it's like a little circle. Now, can you do the really silly thing and blow a raspberry like this? All brass instruments have to buzz their lips inside the mouthpiece so they can get a sound just like that. So you can see how I have it on the trumpet or on the French horn, and those mouthpieces are different sizes, but that's what makes all our brass instruments very similar. They're called the brass family because they're all made of the metal brass. So let's talk about our trumpet first. So our trumpet is our highest brass instrument. Something else that all these brass instruments have is something called a valve. And these valves are these little pipes that you have to control. And when you push your fingers, they open and close them to help make the sound. So our trumpet has 3 valves at the top. So remember how when I had the flute last week, I had so many keys to play? Trumpet players have only 3 that they have to play with their fingers, but they have to use their lips when they're buzzing to play all different pitches up and down. So if you listen to our trumpet player video, he's going to be buzzing into the mouthpiece and his sound will come out this way. So let me show you what our trumpet is going to sound like. I'll turn the brightness down here. Okay, we're ready? So he's buzzing into the front of it, and he has these valves that he's using with his fingers. And he goes pretty high on the trumpet because that's our highest instrument we're going to talk about today. It's also the smallest. You can see the front. So the front of it is where all the sound is coming out. Our trumpet's probably the most popular brass instrument that a lot of people, especially in bands, get to play. Okay, next we're going to talk about our French horn. Now friends, our French horn is kind of fancy, huh? Do you see how it has all this piping all curled up in the middle? If I were to stretch out all of the piping that the French horn had, it would be around 12 or 13 feet. If you take someone, usually an adult man, who's like 6 feet tall, which is pretty normal if you have anyone in your family who's 6 feet tall, and you took 2 people who were 6 feet tall and you laid them on the ground in one and then the other, that's how long a French horn would be if it was fully stretched out, which is really crazy. So our French horn has these little levers on the side which control its valves in the middle. And then at the end, it also has its mouthpiece. Now the French horn is held, and the bell, which is this round section, comes out to the side when they play. So the sound is going down through the valves and out the side. So if you listen to our French horn, you're gonna see how that works to find where it starts. Okay. So here's our French horn, and it's coming at his right side. You can see him holding it. See how he's holding it? He's blowing into the front of it. And his right hand right there is controlling, oh, it's coming out his right side. His left hand right there is controlling the valves. It's coming out his right. Or the mirror's throwing me. Yeah, his left hand's controlling it. It's coming out the right side. So the French horn is a lot deeper than our trumpet was. It's a lot lower. And it's definitely bigger because it's sitting in his lap. When he was holding the trumpet, he was holding up on his face. But it's very pretty. Okay, our next instrument we're going to talk about today is kind of silly. Our trombone is silly because it's our only brass instrument that doesn't use valves, which are what our fingers control in the keys, like all the other instruments. This has a slide. Do you see the slide, friends? We don't have any keys of anything on this instrument, so rather than our fingers playing what the notes are, a trombone player has to move the slide further out or further in to get different sounds, and then they use their lips to buzz to get different sounds at the different positions, which is when they pull their slide out or push it back in. So if you watch my video, I want you to watch how the slide is moving with this trombone. Let me find her. Here we go. I think if you go to right, about here. Okay. Let's watch him move this slide. How he's moving out. Let me slide it back just a little bit. Okay, you can move it a bunch this way. See how he has to move it out and back in to get the different sounds. So his hand is using to slide it rather than hold keys, which is really cool. Okay. So next, we have two instruments left. We're going to talk about the euphonium and the tuba. I'm holding them both up at once because they look a little similar. But if you can see when I printed it, and Miss Katelyn did a pretty good job, our euphonium is smaller than the tuba, so it's going to be higher because remember a long time ago, we talked about how instruments that make high sounds are smaller than instruments that make low sounds. So our euphonium has valves that are up at the top here and the mouthpiece is on the side. So they're going to hold the euphonium out in front of you. And the euphonium video I'm going to play you is just a picture, but you can see him holding it. So it's lower than a lot of the other instruments we've seen so far today. So he's holding it all in his lap, the same way the French horn was held in his lap. But rather than the French horn, when the sound came out the side, the euphonium sound's going to come out the top. You can see his hands playing the three valves. It's a lot lower than even our trumpet, which was super duper high. Okay, friends, I saved our biggest instrument for last today. This is our tuba. Now, our tuba is even bigger. So unlike the euphonium where he could hold it pretty far up, our tuba is going to stretch and take up most of the space that our tuba player has in the video. I also want to show you how these valves, I love how, I bet we're remembering this word now, the valves, the keys that the instruments are using, how these valves are on the top, which a lot of tubas have, but some tubas have valves that are on the side, which look a little different. So our video, you're going to get to see a different kind of tuba. Okay. So you can see how much space our tuba's taking up in his lap there. It's a lot bigger, which is why our tuba is the lowest instrument. And you can even see he has one tuba, and then here's another tuba, so you can see how big it is on the ground over there. So it's super duper low. Okay, friends. friends. That was a lot of brass instruments we just talked about. Let's review what all of them were. So we had 5 instruments today. We talked about the trumpet, which was pretty high and had the valves on top, and the sound came out in the front. Then we talked about the French horn, which has all the tubing curled up in the middle, but we talked about how it's as long as 2 people who were laying right, like foot to foot on the ground, which is super long. And it had valves that were played by these levers, and the sound came out the side when they held it. Then we talked about the trombone that had a slide instead of valves or keys to play with it. And then we talked about the euphonium, which was a little deeper and a little bigger with these valves that were on top. And then last we talked about our tuba friends, which is the biggest instrument that we have. Thank you for learning about our brass family. Next week, we're gonna talk about some percussion instruments, which is gonna be super cool. Until then, bye.